By the time you guys see this, we will finally be back on the road after spending 3 months in Seattle, Washington. And finally hitting the road again after being stationary for so long has really made us realize what we love and what we don't so much love about full-time RVing.
The first thing we love about full-time RVing is just the variety of just everything. There's no monotony in our day anymore. We don't have a specific 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, with only the weekends off. We get to make our own schedule. We get to go wherever we want to go. When we lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana, there was little to nothing to do, especially outdoor activities. We had like a biking and walking trail around town, but that was about it, and it's super flat out there. So it seems pretty boring. So now we have the option to go and see any kind of terrain we want to see, go anywhere we want to see, and that variety and lack of a very set schedule is something that we love so much about this.
Now I'm going to be sort of the Debbie Downer in this video, and for all of the loves that Jenny shares, I'm going to have the flip side to that. You know, there's always kind of a downside to everything. And the downside to having a variety in your everyday life is what Jenny and I like to call decision fatigue. And what that means is that we have to make a decision on basically every small aspect of our lives as full-time RVers. Now, in our past life, when we were living in a house and had full-time jobs, we had a daily routine that was basically already decided for us and set out. You know, we would wake up at a certain time, drive to work, be at work for a certain amount of time, drive back home, cook dinner, hang out for a little bit, and then go to bed. And, you know, there's very little decisions to be made in our day-to-day life. But now, you know, we have to decide where we're going next, you know, what campsite we're going to stay at, where we're going to get water, where we're going to dump our tanks, you know, what we're going to be visiting while we're out there, you know, what sites we're going to see, and we have to check the weather and make sure the weather's going to cooperate, and there's just a ton of other things that, you know, we have to decide on every single day, and that can get tiring.
The next thing that we love, which I actually think is one of the reasons most people decide to be full-time RVers, is that we get to see the country. We get to see anywhere we want to go, really. When we were in Indiana, most of my friends, and I think David's friends too, didn't really travel too far outside of Indiana. And when they did go to see a place, they only went for like 4 or 5 days. They didn't really get to go camping in an area, explore that area, and then also explore like a national park or a national forest or anything like that. Most people I know would only explore big name national parks. But for us, not only have we been able to see beautiful places like Canyonlands, the big sheer rock cliffs in Canyonlands, just how gorgeous, beautiful, and breathtaking they are, but also the Arches in Arches National Park. We've been to Yosemite National Park, but we've also been to places like the Redwoods and just the lush, green, amazing ocean coastal area in northern Oregon. We've been able to see the barren deserts down in Arizona, and we just cannot wait to see more places like that. We get this massive variety of all these places we get to see that when we lived in a sticks and bricks house, we just really didn't have the opportunity to do so.
The downside to getting to travel the country, though, is the anxiety that comes with not knowing what the next site is going to be like. You know, Jenny and I boondock and dry camp all the time in National Forest and BLM land, and when you're staying at a site for 2 weeks that you really like, and then you're just leaving that and abandoning it and going somewhere new, as you're approaching it, Jenny and I start to get anxious. You know, we don't know if we're gonna fit. We don't know if the site's gonna be taken. We sometimes don't know if it's gonna be open to the sun for our solar. So we don't know if we're gonna have power, and we don't always know if we're gonna have cell signal, which is incredibly important to us because, you know, we run our YouTube channel over the cellular network. That's how we upload our videos and everything. So it's a little anxiety inducing moving from a site you know is great to one that you know, don't even know if you can actually fit in. And typically, while we've been at a site, we know where to get water and where to dump at, but sometimes when we arrive at a new site, We don't know for sure whether the places that we think that we're going to be able to get water and dump at are still open. We've actually arrived at places before to find that the dump station is closed, the water spigots are locked up or just disassembled, and now what are we going to do? So there's always anxiety when traveling to a new spot. And for those of you that stay in RV parks all the time and don't boondock and dry camp, I think the same thing holds for that as well. You know, if you've been at an RV park for a long time that has really great amenities, their dump station and, you know, maybe their laundry room is well taken care of and the sites are just really well taken care of and you've got a friendly host, you know, when you move to a new RV park, it might be the exact opposite, and you won't know until you get there.
The next point that David and I love about full-time RVing is that we can essentially stay anywhere. We have found just innumerable amount of spots on BLM land and in national forests where we can stay for free, completely surrounded by nature. And for those of you that don't know or have only just recently started following our channel, that is actually the main reason that David and I decided to start full-time RVing, is to stay out in beautiful places in national forests and out on BLM land. And because that's how we wanted to stay before we hit the road, we ended up outfitting our trailer with some things that allowed us to do that a little bit longer. For example, we have solar on our trailer and we live full-time off of solar. We also have a composting toilet so that we were able to get rid of our black tank and turn it into a second gray tank, essentially allowing us to have double the gray tank storage, and it has been amazing.
Now, while living out in the national forest and just surrounded by that natural beauty is incredible, the downside to it is that you have limited resources, and that has taken some getting used to. You know, we live off of our batteries. We rely on our solar for our electrical power. You know, we're not plugged in to the grid, so we actually have limited electrical power. And probably the biggest thing for us is water. You know, we can only take about a week and a half to 2 weeks of water out with us. So if we were to ever stay longer than that, we've got to fill up our water somehow, drive into town, fill up our water, so we have to conserve on power and water, whereas when we were living in a home, we essentially had unlimited of those two resources. And another thing we had to get used to is having a lot smaller food storage. You know, back home we had a walk-in pantry and we had a massive refrigerator, but here in our trailer we've got a small pantry and a very small refrigerator and freezer. So, you know, we just don't have like the food options and variety available to us that we had in our home. And when we do run out of food, or we, you know, forgot to maybe get something at the store last time, like we wanted to cook something for dinner and we forgot a recipe, or an ingredient, we don't have it with us. It's not like, oh, I'll just run to the store real quick, it's only 5 minutes away. Nope, if we're out in the national forest, it's typically at least an hour away.
The next point that we really truly love, and it really feeds our soul, is the solitude we get when we are, you know, boondocking or dry camping out in a national forest or out on BLM land. We love being completely alone out there. You can't even see where the next trailer is. You might not even know where they are. And you just have this either tiny or even a massive campsite all to yourself, but also the whole road and all of the forest that you can see around you to yourself. And that's amazing for Sweetie, because not only can she just run her little heart out all over the campsite, but we don't have to keep her on a leash when we go for walks and stuff like that. So it's great for her. You don't have any generator noise. There are no cars driving by. It's just peace and quiet. You can hear just the wind through the trees, the birds chirping, and it is so magnificent to just thoroughly enjoy and soak up the peace and quiet that a national forest or BLM land gives you.
Sometimes, though, you don't get that solitude and you actually get the exact opposite, and there's people just everywhere. You know, not every site is a completely secluded site in the national forest. A lot of them are group camping, so to speak, and Jenny and I have stayed in a lot of those where there's just a ton of people around, and sometimes the next site or the closest site to you is literally right next to you. And for you fellow RVers, you know that the sound deadening quality of these RV walls is virtually nothing. So if there's someone camped right next to you, you can hear them through the walls of the RVs and they can hear you too. So, you know, typically not, you know, by yourself at all, and like your front door is facing theirs, and like your windows are facing each other, so you can like, I don't know, always see each other, and you gotta like close the blinds or something to take a shower and all that stuff, so you're not even really, you know, alone in your own trailer or your own RV. And unfortunately, that's just how it goes sometimes.
One of my favorite plus sides or things that I love about traveling full-time in especially our trailer is that it is so easy to tidy up in here. Our space is what, 400 feet? Something like that? 400 square feet?
200.
So 200 square feet? It's even smaller than I thought. And it is so easy to keep it clean in here. You know, we don't have a lot of countertop space, so there's not a lot of stuff that can be on the counter, so it's really easy to keep those, you know, clean it up when it does get messy. It's, you know, there's not a lot of floor space. We only have one little thing that ever needs vacuumed. So it's really, really easy to keep it clean in here. You know, we only have so many places that you can dust, so many places that dust can actually collect, only so many windows to clean, and it's great compared to our house. Our house, it seemed like, was always dirty. Even if the counters were tidied up, it was like the floor was always dirty, or like the countertops all needed clean. And it's like I would work on one room, and I'd work on that room for an hour or so, and then I'd move to the next room and be like, oh, I have 5 more of these rooms to go, you know. But here in the trailer, it can take me just a half an hour to fully clean the trailer, and that is amazing.
And then the downside of living in such a small space like this, especially with all of our animals, is that it gets dirty fast. You know, we may be able to clean this whole trailer in 15, 20 minutes, but we have to do that every single day, sometimes twice a day. Like I said, with all the pets we have, the pet hair accumulates in here ridiculously fast, and I've got to sweep our floor at least twice a day. You know, pet hair accumulates in our heater vents, and I've got to sweep that out with a vacuum on a daily basis. And yeah, it's just pretty insane how quickly it gets cluttered in here. You know, like Jenny said, we don't have very much counter space. So when we get some things out to maybe do some work or maybe some hobbies or crafts or, you know, whatever, it just gets like so cluttered and stuff accumulates so quickly, and it just doesn't take much before the whole trailer just looks like, I don't know, like a hurricane blew through it and there's just stuff all over the place. So yeah, fast to clean, but you got to do it all the time.
The next thing we love, which admittedly, probably some people might not love this about living in an RV full-time, but living in a small space forces us in a way to be a lot more minimalistic. So we literally don't have extra space to buy extra things that we might only use once, store in a closet, and never see again until you clean out that closet. And then it's like, oh, what is this? I used this once. Okay, time to donate it or sell it or whatever. So for us, whenever we're at a store or whenever we think that we want something new, we have to think, do we actually have room for this? Do we have a place to put it? Are we going to use it if we get it? Typically the answer is no. Mostly because we don't have room for it, because we live in such a small space. And there are larger RVs out there. Like, we live in a relatively small travel trailer, but the bigger Class A's or the bigger fifth wheels, they have, like, you know, bunkhouses and all this storage space, but it's still less than in a house. So you still have to live minimalistic. And we really like that. Plus, our little trailer, it's super cozy. I don't know what it is about our trailer. We love it so much. David has even made the analogy to where when he was a little kid and he would build little forts out of chairs and extra blankets and pillows, and he'd, you know, get all up in there and he'd be reading a book or playing games or whatever in his little fort that he built. Our trailer feels a lot like that. And I don't know, it brings back kind of the childlike wonder. You don't have to worry about purchasing extra things. You don't have to worry about all the stuff that you might have if you lived in a house. You just don't have to worry about it. And it's so, so refreshing. Plus, living in this small space and practicing a minimalistic lifestyle means that not only do we purchase less, but we consume less, which means we also create less waste, including plastic waste, which means that not only are you helping the environment in a way by consuming less and having less garbage, but that means that there's actually even less that's ever going to go into a landfill or end up in the ocean even. So, in a way, it's actually good for the environment too to live in a smaller space, plus we love how cozy it is.
So living in a small space is great because it kind of forces you to be a minimalist, which will save you money because, you know, you're you're buying less things, but you're probably just gonna spend all that extra money on RV repairs. You guys know that have been RVing for a while, and for those of you that are new to RVing have probably heard it 1,000 times that RVs just are not built very well. The quality is subpar to say the least, and over time things in these just fail. They just start falling apart. We've owned our trailer for 2.5 years now, and we've repaired a few things on our trailer, and actually just while we were rolling down the road a couple days ago, one of our blinds just fell off, and I had to actually do some tweaking to the metal on it because it was so bent and twisted to get it back and hung up. Thankfully we did, but if I didn't know how to do that kind of stuff, I would have to pay someone to fix that. And the other issues we've had with our trailer are typically things that you would have to take into a shop to have repaired. Like the control board on our fridge just stopped working, so our fridge just completely stopped working, and our front tongue jack actually broke once. I was cranking it off of our truck and it just broke and slammed back down onto the ball of the truck. Thankfully nothing else broke with that impact, but yeah, that happened. And even though those things have happened, I feel like we've gotten really lucky with our trailer, because I've heard some pretty bad horror stories of people's roofs failing and getting water intrusion and just all this nasty stuff. So yeah, the joke goes that if you want a hobby, buy an RV, because it will just keep you busy with all the repairs that it needs.
Last but not least, the thing that we love the most about full-time RVing is that we essentially get to spend the rest of our lives together 24/7. And for some of you that maybe, don't like your spouse very much, it might seem a little daunting to have to spend all that time with your spouse. And David actually got kind of made fun of when he was quitting his job before he hit the road. There were some people that he worked with that were like, what did they say?
They were like, I can't spend all that time with my wife. I don't know how you're gonna just be trapped in that box with her.
Yeah, so, but for us, we see it as, I had to spend 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 or however early you had to leave in the morning, at work, away from each other, and then we'd get home and we'd have 3 or 4 hours, and most of that would be cooking and then doing chores, not really actually spending time together. We'd only get the weekends, and who just wants to live for the weekends? I mean, come on. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So being able to do that full-time RVing has been just the best possible thing to be able to spend all the time I want with you.
Yeah, and being able to spend, every waking moment with your best friend is pretty incredible. But the downside is that when you get into a fight with them, there's nowhere to go. You are in you're in this tiny box with them, and there's no way to get away from them, and no way for them to get away from you. Mm-hmm. I mean, we do technically have 2 rooms in this thing.
One of them's a bathroom,
but it's the bathroom, so it doesn't really count.
We've got a curtain.
It doesn't count when the tempers are flaring. Mm-hmm. There's just nowhere to go. And another thing with that is that there's no real alone time, and I actually really value my alone time. I like being alone sometimes. It's quiet. You're left to your own devices. It's really nice. But, I've had to sacrifice that, and Jenny's had to sacrifice her alone time, to become full-time RVers. But with that said, I think that is so worth it, and I would sacrifice that alone time every time to get to spend every day with you.
Aw, thanks.
But that has been the things that we love and don't really love about full-time RVing. We'll catch you guys later.
Bye.